When I was little, I used to write myself notes on crinkled scraps of paper. I would roll the notes up tight and use my hairbands to keep them secure, and stuff them into plastic water bottles I saved. And then I'd hide them in my room to find them another day. I don't remember what I wrote. And since our home burned in a fire when I was 11, all the notes were lost. I remember crying for a week thinking about all my bottled notes just gone. After that, I started writing in a journal, but it wasn't the same. In anger, I'd write a note, then toss it into the fireplace so it would burn away like all the other notes I'd so lovingly written. It didn't matter in the end. Whether the note was kind or cruel, ash was the fate of all of them. I was 14 when I gave up writing altogether. That was the year my parents divorced. Or rather, my dad just packed a suitcase and left, and never came back. I'd been very close with him, much closer than I am with Mom. He was the only person in the world I had told about my bottles. He would take recycled bottles from his work and give them to me when he picked me up from school sometimes. And I remember squealing in delight when I would see him walk into my classroom, holding a box full of them. I grew more distant from my mom. Not that I was angry or I hated her for letting my dad leave, but I was just confused and lonely. I'd lost my best friend, and it left an aching void in my chest. I started taking walks on the beach every afternoon after school. The damp, salty winds and dim hum of the waves eased the hurt. And I would imagine flying over the ocean, away from all the pain that had near permanently etched itself into my face. I was on the beach again today, after spending all of the overcast day inside classes I was beyond bored with. I trekked barefoot along the lapping waves, as I'd learned very quickly to put my shoes and socks in my backpack before hitting the sand. That was the only bad part about the beach. Even so, once I figured out how to keep sand from my clothes, it wasn't awful. It was actually really nice. So I started bringing a towel to school with me too, just so I could go right to shore and sit there without having to go home first. I picked up a piece of driftwood and dragged it in the wet sand as I walked. I closed my eyes as I breathed in the ocean air. I smiled. The smell and the sound and view of the ocean was one of the only things that could make me do that now. Before I could open my eyes, my foot hit plastic and I stumbled to the side, and worried I might have cut myself on it. I lifted my foot up and bent my head. No cut. I sighed and looked down at a plastic bottle. Pain wrenched in my chest as I knelt down to pick it up. Then my stomach turned. There was a note inside, neatly rolled up. I looked up and down the beach. I was alone, save for a couple that was walking along a wooden pier behind me. I bit my lip as I turned my attention toward the plastic bottle again. I shook my head and dropped it into the sand. I was being stupid. Of course, I wasn't the only person who would write notes in bottles for fun. It was probably just a little kid, before their life took a darker turn. I started heading home. I wanted off the beach more than anything now. Emotion reared its ugly head, and I shoved my fists into my pockets to fight back tears. My sand-covered feet hit the sidewalk. I stopped, and I looked back. It was late at night when I finally took the bottle from my backpack. I waited until Mom was asleep, She was the kind of parent to knock at the door and let herself in regardless if I gave the okay or not. Using a paper clip, I fished the curled note out. The paper looked aged and stained and smelled slightly of coffee. I slid the rubber band that held it together off and unfurled it. My mind went blank as I recognized the scratchy handwriting.
Hey, kiddo. I know it's been a while, and I'm sorry for that. I should have been upfront with you. I know you're smart. Hell, smarter than me, probably. I shouldn't have abandoned you. I'm sorry. You don't have to forgive me, but I just need to say it. I hope you're doing all right, and that whatever you've been up to, you've been having fun with. And I may not feel like it, but I love you. And I miss you. Very much.
I stared. My heart pounded hard in my chest and I scarcely breathed. I wanted to run a mile and lay down all at once. I shook my head. No. This wasn't right. This just had to be some sick joke someone was playing on me. Somehow. Even if I didn't know how yet. My mind raced as tears spilled over my cheeks and onto the desk. I balled up the note in anger and sobbed. I didn't even talk to anyone at school. Why would it be someone at school? That didn't make sense. It didn't seem right. Mom and I were distant, but she wasn't cruel. I knew she loved me, and I cared for her too, even if we had trouble showing it. Was it possible it was actually my dad? I wiped my nose on my sleeve. I looked out my window to the moonlit city. My jaw set. I ripped a scrap of paper from my notebook. Who are you? I couldn't think of anything else to write. I rolled it up, secured it with a rubber band, and dropped it in the bottle. Throwing on my jacket, I quietly opened the window and slid through, plastic bottle in hand, determined to find answers.